Good evening again. Confusingly, this meetup today is not only about only databases. It's also featuring two Austrian speakers, and both of them have the same first name. So my name is Markus too. So I think you can just remember both of us in SQL from Austria. That will be good enough. So the talk I'm giving today is about pagination queries and how to do that right in SQL. It's actually independent of which database you're using, so it works in MySQL, it works in Postgres and in all the others too, but it's in Postgres it's just the nicest way to do it in Postgres, because I will show you why. So what I will show you is, first of all, there is this offset keyword. Does anybody use or know this offset keyword? Please raise your hand. Okay. I have bad news for you. Offset is really bad. Offset kills performance. But the good news is, you can do these pagination queries without offset. That's what we will see today. Let's see if that still works. That has the benefit, it's faster and it has fewer side effects. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Just one short disclaimer, we have seen Postgres has so many different indexes. Whenever I say index today, I just mean B-tree indexes. No other indexes, no full text search and all of that, just B-tree. So let's look at one of these queries. It's a pretty simple example. So there's a news table. So let's assume we have some news in there. I've also added a where clause with a topic, which is just a placeholder for whatever you are searching on. Then we have order by, date descending, ID descending. That's just to have some specific order, so the most recent first in that case. And then we have limit 10, which just means just give me the first 10 rows. We have also an index there, a B-tree index on the news table, just on the topic column, which is what we filter on. This limit 10 is actually not SQL standard. It's supported by MySQL and by Postgres, but for example not by SQL Server or Oracle. In the meanwhile, we have something which is standard, which is called fetch first 10 rows only. That works in Postgres in the meanwhile and in many other databases. But if you're used to limit still works. So who is using something like that? Okay, great. Basically half of you, I guess. Now let's look what happens if you throw this SQL at a database. And to demonstrate this, I'll show you an explain plan as it is shown by Postgres. I've just simplified it, so I've removed quite a lot of data which is not relevant for this example. And on the top half of the slide, I try to visualize what's going on. Okay? And to read this execution plan, we have to start from the bottom. So there is a bitmap index scan operation and a bitmap heap scan operation. These both go together in some way, so it's first accessing the index to locate those rows that match this topic filter. Then they go to the table and fetch all the other data from these rows. And this is visualized in this chart on the left-hand side. There's some unordered data. It is stored in some undefined order on the disk in the end. So what it does, it needs to read this whole chunk of rows that satisfies the where clause. After that, and in this example I'm fetching 10,000 rows, after that there's a so-called top-n sort operation. This is to satisfy the order by which we had in the query, order by date descending and ID descending. But there's something special with this top-n. Because of the limit clause we have, it knows upfront that we will need only 10 rows in our final result. So the optimization kicks in and says, okay, I need only memory for 10 rows. I don't need to keep all these 10,000 rows in memory. So that's what the top-n sort optimization does. It just keeps 10 rows in memory, and whenever some new row comes in, it puts it in the correct slot where it belongs to, and if one falls off, it's just thrown away. So as a result, the memory consumption of this top-n sort is pretty low, considering that we are sorting some 10,000 rows here, 18 kilobytes. Finally, the execution plan says us, okay, we cut off after 10 rows. That's the limit step. So that's what's happening if you execute this query in any database, but the execution plan here is shown for Postgres. So, how does it perform? So on this chart we have on the x-axis we have the data volume that satisfies the where clause. So how many rows match this topic equals 1, 2, 3, 4 clause. And on the y-axis we have the time, how long the query needs to execute. Obviously, the bigger the base set gets, the more matches we have for the where clause, the slower the execution becomes. However, we will see how to fix that. But first, let's try this bad thing which I call offset. It's a really bad thing, that's what you need to remember from today. Offset is bad. So, it's the same query. I've just put in offset. Is the football going on now? Okay, so I have just put in offset 10, which means I don't mind the first 10 rows. I just want to have the result from there on. And then we still have this limit 10, which again says, okay, I just want the next 10 rows. So let's look again at the execution plan. What happens in Postgres? It's still the same. The data on the disk is still not sorted in any particular way. So it still has to read all these 10,000 rows. And then the problem is that the top N sort now needs to keep 20 rows in memory, because it has to keep those of the offset in memory too. So the combined number, the offset plus the limit, is what has to be kept in memory. Therefore, the memory consumption is slightly higher here. But that's just the second page. If we go on, the memory consumption gets bigger and bigger. And if we go to the last page, obviously we have to have all these 10,000 rows in memory, which translates to some 1 megabyte in that case. So that means if we try to chart that too, I have now two lines here. The bottom line is still the performance, how to fetch the first page, and the upper line is the performance, how to fetch the last page. If we go to the last one and increase offset until we find the last one. So we see the query gets slower the bigger the data is, and it even gets slower the further I go back in the result set. So it's getting slower and slower and slower all the time. And that's something pretty bad. And there are easy solutions how to actually fix that. Just in case you're curious, there's something like a jump in there, and this is the place when the base set doesn't fit into memory anymore. So down here it's doing an in-memory sort, and up there it's doing an external sort. So that could be fixed with increasing some memory settings, but we will see how to fix that at all in the next slide. So however, there are several improvements to this type of query. The first one is to have the right index. And the right index in that case means that you have a single index that supports the where clause. This is the topic column, as well as the order by clause. This is the date column and the index column. A single query to support all of them, the where clause and the order by clause. That basically means that if we look at the execution plan, an index is nothing more than a sorted representation of the index data. So if we have date and ID in there, it basically means it is already sorted on disk in the order we asked with our order by clause in the query. That means there is no sort operation anymore in the execution plan. It's already sorted on disk. It just needs to go there, read 10 rows, and then it's done. However, if we add some offset there and go to the second page, we will notice that it has to read more rows. Again, offset plus limit has to be combined together, and this is what it has to read to find actually that those 10 rows you're interested in. So again, the further we go back, the slower it gets. At some point, the optimizer will decide, okay, it doesn't make any sense anymore to use this index in sequential order because that causes a lot of random I/O. Instead, I will just go for optimized I/O path with this bitmap operations there and just do the sort anyway. So finally, at the last page, if we fetch the last page, we might end up with the same execution plan we had before, and consequently, the same performance. However, in this chart, the performance to fetch the first page is virtually zero. It's a few milliseconds. It just goes to the index, reads 10 rows, and that's it. However, fetching the last page is still the same as it was before. Second page will be still pretty fast, but somewhere in there you will end up. So this is already a pretty neat trick. So that if you create the right index that covers the where clause as well as the order by clause, you can improve the performance to fetch the first page to essentially 0. Let's put it that way. No matter how big the data gets. But we can do better. There's a simple principle in performance tuning. It's really, really, really simple. Just try to avoid loading data that you don't want to have in your result set. Just try to write a query in such a way that it doesn't need to touch those data which we have already seen on previous pages. That's all. If we use offset, however, it has to go to that data just to count it. If we say offset 10, then it means it will fetch 10 rows just to count them. If we say offset 9,000 something, like I've seen in your example, then it will go and count 9,000 rows. So it's loading or touching this data just to count it and throw it away. That's a pretty bad idea in the first place. And now I would like to know if you do have any idea how we could implement a query to fetch, let's say, the second page without using offset.
For example, we can remember the last element we have used and input it into the where clause.
Exactly, thank you. So the idea is we can remember the last row from the previous page we have fetched and then just try to say, okay, I want to go on from there. I have seen everything that was before that into a where clause, basically. That's it. The where clause is the main way to select which rows you want to have in your result set. If there are some specific rows you don't want to have in your result set, use the where clause. That's always the first option. And to show you how this looks like, I have changed this query to fetch the second page, but not using offset. Instead, I have this magic where clause in there. So it basically says where the date and ID together in brackets is less than the previous date and previous ID, which I mean just the last IDs from the previously fetched page. This is pretty straight SQL. Still, it is hardly known that this exists. Do you know what it means if you write it in this way, that you make brackets, multiple columns, and then a comparison operator? Have you? Who has ever seen that? Okay, quite a few. Okay, it is a pretty old way. It's in the SQL standard since '92. I remember. Repeat, '92. That's 22 years ago. It is defined something like this. So if you compare x and y, is it greater than a and b? Then it is true only if x is greater than a, or if x and a are equals, then y must be greater than b. And this is just a fancy way to say it's true whenever x, y sorts before a, b. And interestingly, this is exactly what we need for our use case. If we want to say it is sorted by a, b, and we want to go on from there, then we need exactly this syntax. Yeah. So why do we need that at all? This strange bracket syntax. I'd like to show it in a more simple case. If you have just a date column, if you would just do order by date, and there's just date without any time component in there. So if we fetch the first page, let's say 10 rows, then we will get some, the last row from the previous page will be some date. And if we try to write a where clause that delivers the next 10 rows, we have two options. We can say either the date is less than that date, that will skip some rows. The other way is we can say less than or equals, that will deliver duplicates. To make it work, we need a distinct sort order. We need some unique column in the order by clause. That's why I've put the ID column in there. Once we have that, we can just use this strange syntax in brackets. It's called row values in SQL standard. And we can just say, go on from there. And that's exactly what it is. It just says, go to this position and then go on from there. If you're not using MySQL, you need to emulate this because there are only a few databases. There's only one database doing it right. Have a guess which one. If you're using any other database like MySQL or whatever, then you need to emulate it with something like that. There is the URL. Just go there and read it. Okay. So let's do it again. Let's look at how the database executes this kind of query. Again, with a not so optimal index, just covering the topic, like we had it in the first place. So, fetching the first page is essentially the same because there's no where clause, like there was no offset. So the interesting part is fetching the second page. Oh, it's fine. It's just okay. So what's happening there is we have a new line here which is shown since Postgres 9.2. It says rows removed by filter, and that just means it has, when it has accessed the table, it found out that there were 10 rows that did not satisfy the where clause, and it has thrown it away at that stage during processing. Okay, but it's important to notice that this is a pretty early stage as compared to before, because before we had offset 10 and the limit 10, which means that the top n sort had to keep 20 rows in memory, so it had to use 19Ks, if you remember. Right now we are discarding the rows we are not interested in even before the sort starts. That means the top n sort will always only need 10 rows in memory. The memory consumption of the sorting does not grow. You can go back to the last page and you will still just need those 18Ks to hold 10 rows in memory, because the rows are discarded at an earlier stage during execution. This leads to some interesting behavior in this performance chart. So fetching the last page is slightly faster as fetching the first page. Just slightly, but because it's removing the rows at an earlier stage, it's slightly faster. But you can also look at it like fetching the last page has essentially become as fast as fetching the first page. But if you remember well, there was this trick to use the index that covers both the where and order by. You can still use this trick if you use the where clause approach. And then it looks like that. The first page is still the same, there was no offset, there's no where clause. But if you go to the second page, then the database, Postgres in that case, will recognize this syntax and say, okay, I just used those values you provide there, use them to find the right spot in the index, and just deliver 10 rows from there. For every page. It's the same, it just goes to the right place where you stopped from the previous page, delivers 10 rows, and that's it. There's no more work to do. So, performance-wise, it means this. Fetching the first page is freaking fast. Fetching the last page is equally fast. So it's independent of the base set size, so how many rows satisfy the where clause in the first place, as well as which page you're loading. I mean, that's cool, huh? So to compare those four charts, so we have the offset method to the top and the seek method to the bottom. This is the name I invented for this method. We have it without a good index on the left-hand side and with the good index on the right-hand side. So you can see with the right index you can improve the speed to fetch the first page, and with the seek method you can improve the speed to fetch the last page on the same level as fetching the first page. And if you do both, then you won. Then you just won. However, you cannot always reach this performance, because the prerequisite was to have a single index to cover the where clause and the order by clause. As soon as you have a join and the order by goes to some different tables, you can't reach this anymore. But you can still improve it in that way if you use this method. So, too good to be true, I guess. There are some limitations, and I guess you know them. Somebody should say, oh, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. Nobody. So the first one is that you cannot directly navigate to arbitrary pages. That means if you have a navigation in your application that says page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on, and you allow the user to click on any of these, you cannot use this method. Because to use this method you need to have the values from the previous page. So you can always fetch the next one, the next one, the next one, but you can't skip anyone. Bidirectional navigation, so changing the direction of fetching the rows. It is possible with this method too, it's just a little bit more awkward because you need to reverse all the greater and less than signs and also the ascending and descending order. So you will need some ifs in your code to make that work. It works, but it's just some more ifs in your code. To really enjoy this method, you need a database and also tools that have support for this row value syntax, so multiple columns in brackets. Unfortunately, the only database having sufficient support is Postgres, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it. And what's really a big issue is framework support. All the frameworks that are out there just support offset and limit and similar things, but there's hardly any framework that supports this approach. However, if you're using Java by coincidence, there's juke.org, which has native support for this method, and if you're using Ruby, and I guess some of you are, there is a gem order query that does that trick too. However, this one has a small bug when it comes to performance, but I will try to sort it out with the author of that. However, who cares about this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kind of pagination nowadays? I mean, that's old-fashioned. That was so 90s. Today we have this infinite scrolling UI, you know? You just go to the page, you scroll down to the bottom of the page, an Ajax query is triggered, you fetch the next one, insert it into the HTML, and then you can scroll on. I mean, that's the way we do it in this decade or in this century, whatever you want to look at it. And this pagination method is a pretty good fit for this way of UI, this way to implement this in the UI. Because first of all, using infinite scrolling, you cannot skip pages. You always only need the next page. So you don't need to navigate directly to arbitrary pages, which you cannot do with the seek method. The next thing is browsing backwards. I mentioned that it is possible, you have to reverse all the order and the signs. But if you're using infinite scrolling, you most likely not need to change the direction because it's in the browser anyway. Okay? Finally, using this seek method, you cannot get drifting results. If you're using offset, you basically say, do the query again and start counting again. But what happens if in the meanwhile there was a new row inserted into the table? So the result might be wrong because you started to count again from 10, which means basically you might get duplicates. If you say offset 10, limit 10, then you might get a row you have already seen before. I've seen really funny JavaScript code to try to keep duplicate that in the front end. There are strange things happening because there are some special cases you have to take care of. Like, what if more rows were inserted in the meanwhile? So if we fetch the first 10 rows, and then when we fetch the next 10 rows, there were 20 rows inserted in the meanwhile. So if you do offset again, you will get rows you have not seen, but they will be just the wrong rows you have not seen yet. So you can get all strange kinds of logical errors. You will show wrong data to the client. However, with the seek method, you just say, okay, I've seen all the data till there, just give me the next from there on. It's stable results. Oh yeah, Postgres. So it's Postgres is a great database. I think he made the point before. But I want to prove that now by this this way of doing pagination. To make it work really well, I said you need this row value support. You can emulate it, but it's awkward and it's not giving the best performance. So we're looking at a few databases: MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, SQLite, and SQL Server. And only a few of them actually support this syntax in the where clause at all. So SQLite and SQL Server don't know this syntax, although it's in the standard since '92. Okay, that's 20 years. Next, you need to be able to do range comparisons on these kinds of things. And funny enough, Oracle has a special error message which just says, I can't do range expressions on these kind of bracket things. Optimal index usage. So the database has to understand that if you are using this syntax, it basically means go to this record which matches these two values which I'm supporting you and go on from there. Okay? Postgres can do it, Oracle can do it, but only if you have equal signs, which doesn't help for our use case, and that's it. So MySQL, for example, understands the query in the correct way, but cannot use the index in the correct way. So you will not gain the performance from MySQL in this case. Also, to make it work good, you need to be able to create an index that matches the order by clause. So we're looking at these things too. There are some basic capabilities which more like every database should be able to use an index for. For example, the first one is an index can be read in both ways, so it can be read from up-down or down-up. We have seen it in that case that I had order by date descending and ID descending, but the index was just straight. And the result was that we have seen an index scan backwards. So that means the database can read the index in both directions, whatever you need for descending and ascending. So pretty much every database can do that, except Firebird. That's the only one that I know of. So order by, ascending, descending, pretty basic, everybody knows that. Indexing, ascending, descending is something that we lose our old friend MySQL at. So that means if you're having an order by clause that says, let's say, date descending and ID ascending, then you will need to create the index in the same way. You will need to say that the index also needs to be date ascending or descending, whatever I said before, and the other way around. So they must match in some way. However, if you try to create such an index in MySQL, then it works, apparently. But it just ignores it. It doesn't even give you a warning. It just does it the same way. It does not change the order, and it just, yeah, you will notice by the performance then. So nulls first, nulls last. Who has ever heard of order by nulls first, nulls last? Oh, quite a lot. That's interesting. Okay, the SQL standard is pretty stupid in that respect. It doesn't say where nulls should go. It just says all nulls should appear together, either before all the real values or after the real values. So the defaults are different. MySQL and SQL Server put them first, Oracle and Postgres put them last. If you want to be sure where they are, you can say order by your column nulls first or nulls last. That's also in the standard since ages. Nevertheless, MySQL can't do it, SQL Server can't do it. And finally, if you're using one of these nulls first, nulls last, and want to reach the optimal performance, the right bottom chart, then you would need to do that in the index too. The order by must match the index, okay? And there's only one database that supports nulls first and nulls last in the index definition. So to finalize all of this, this method, you should just do it. You can do it tomorrow. If you're using you were raising the hands, you're using offset, think about that. Offset is basically like I like to compare it to sleep in other programming languages. It just makes your execution slower. The bigger the number, the slower the execution gets. Really, get offset out of your mind. The way to not select anything is where. Okay? And yeah, well, finally, I love Postgres too. Okay? And you see this chart, and everybody might know that MySQL is the most popular open source database. Right? That's their claim. Postgres claim is it's the most advanced open source database. And I think this chart pretty much proves that point. So you really want to have a look at Postgres, just as a side note. Okay, so that's it for this pagination stuff. That's me. I'm running this site, usetheindexloop.com, where you can learn all of this about this trick and many other tricks you can do with indexes. Yeah, well, and if you have questions, then I think there are some online, so I'm already scared of them. So any questions from the audience, also maybe regarding how to do it or when to do it and anything like that? Otherwise it's your turn.
I'm sorry, these are more personal questions maybe. Not related to Seek method. The one is when and why would you choose a NoSQL database? And maybe we can join it with the other question, which is really hard, and that is, why do you hate MongoDB so much?
So why and when would I use NoSQL databases? Well, there are some use cases from the past. So I've been working at telcos 10 years ago, or even longer ago, and I remember that, for example, storing profile picture uploads is something, yes, you can do it in a database, in a relational, you can use a blob for that, but it doesn't feel right. Okay? For that, today I think I would use something like Cassandra or so, where just the blob, put it in some other storage. I would still use the relational model for all the other things, but just instead of using the blob field, I would probably put some of these NoSQL things. I think Cassandra might be a good fit here. There's another case I remember from maybe 15 years ago. It's like sharing session state over servers. So if you have a cluster for load balancing and maybe for failover, and they want to share some sessions of your user sessions, just like cookie session, there was at some time the only reliable way to do it was to store it in the database, which is a pretty stupid thing to do. I mean, the database is for ACID, it is for durability and for reliability and all of that. And session information is something pretty transient. If you lose it, it might be bad, but okay, it's not really bad. It's just a little bit bad. So I think there might be some things like out there which are so more in memory and automatically replicated across some nodes. I think Redis might be a good fit in here to store that kind of data. Again, just that kind of data, and won't throw away the SQL database. I would still have that, but for the session data, I won't use a relational database. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I think these are two cases where I know that I would love to have NoSQL some decades ago. I hope that somehow answers that question. And then there's the MongoDB question. Oh, that's a good one. I actually don't hate MongoDB. I just like to make fun of it, okay? Because it's so easy. No, seriously, I don't hate MongoDB. I think the idea is not exactly bad. So having this JSON interface and just store it as it and retrieve it as it is not a bad idea. There are other databases doing it too, CouchDB and things like that, where you just put it in there via web interface and just grab it out the same way. I just got the feeling that MongoDB is just the idea is fine, but the implementation seems to be crap. That's the feeling I got. So there's this video, everybody knows this video, so why didn't you use MongoDB? Because MongoDB is web scale. You know this video? No? Okay, we have to look at it afterwards. Okay. So their claim is that horizontal scalability works fine, and it seems to be wrong. They had this global right lock. Then they said they solved it, but then it turned out, oh no, it's just less global now. It's still global, but less global. It's not super global anymore, it's just global. Now they just announced they have it on document level in the queue. I think it will be released on document level locking pretty soon, maybe. It just seems to be, the idea is good, the implementation is bad, and yeah, the best thing about them is probably marketing. And I don't really hate it. Indexing, for example, in MongoDB works the same way like in SQL databases. And as a proof, if you look at the O'Reilly book about MongoDB, in the indexing chapter it says, go over to usetheindexloop.com. No kidding. The MongoDB book says indexing works like that. So I hope that somehow I don't really hate it, but I think many people are using it for the wrong reason. But to come to Postgres again, I've been at PGCon in Ottawa last month, and Markus, the other Markus, also mentioned the JSON store. We have this JSON-B store in the meanwhile, which is a more efficient way to store JSON than MongoDB does. So Postgres, as of today, can store JSON in a more efficient way than MongoDB does. And on top of that, there are few projects that will build a MongoDB-like front end to Postgres, so that you might have in maybe 6 months or maybe a year, I don't know, you will have a drop-in replacement for MongoDB backed by Postgres. So I said the idea is good, but the implementation is bad. You see the picture? Any new questions which are not on this side?
Maybe I have one.
So for those of us that are unlucky and have to use MySQL, is this worth doing even with these missing features?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You just have to use this workaround. Look it up on the web page because it's easy to get it wrong. And then I think it is worth using for 2 reasons, because it's faster, and more importantly, you don't get wrong results because the drifting effect is not there. Okay?
Any follow-up? No? Okay, there was a quite upvoted question about MariaDB. MariaDB, and somebody was asking when migrating from MySQL whether they should choose Postgres or MariaDB.
That's easy to answer. Okay, so the question is, if I migrate away from MySQL, should I use MariaDB or Postgres? It's easy to answer. You should have used Postgres in the first place. But besides that, in all honesty, it really depends on your skill level. Also what Markus said. If you're used to use MySQL, obviously MariaDB will be the easier transition path. You can do things wrong with Postgres if you don't know how to use it properly. It's a matter of fact. So, for example, if you're using some software downloaded from the internet, let's say WordPress or any of these things that were developed against MySQL, then please use MySQL or Maria, but don't try Postgres for that. It's just because they implemented it against that, then it works best against that. If you wrote your software using MySQL and you don't know anything about relational databases, I suggest you look first at what you can do with Postgres, and then think if this makes sense for you. And there are many things in the standard, even in the SQL standard, which are not covered by MySQL. Like we have seen common table expressions in this presentation, which by incident, there's another feature, window functions. It's also called part of the SQL standard. It's one of the most useful features I know. You can do things like running totals. So if you have an account table where you have transactions and you want to calculate, okay, it starts by 0 and then there's plus 100, so I want to have 100, then there's plus 20, 120 and so on, the running total. You can use that within the window functions in a pretty easy way. It's SQL standard, it's supported by all the major databases except MySQL. So if you're migrating away from MySQL, have a look. In German we say über den Tellerrand schauen. Do you understand that? Look over the how to say that?
Expand your horizon.
Yeah, expand your horizon. First, have a look what other tools like Postgres or other databases can do for you. Postgres is just a good choice because of the price. And then judge on your needs. Honestly, there is no right answer. Go for Postgres or go for Mariah. It really depends on your case.
Okay, the last online question, really personal. How did you come to writing a book about SQL performance, and what did you do before?
Okay, it's a long story. I think I told it to Marcus on the train, right? I will try to make it short. So I used to work for almost 10 years at a bank, and at that bank I did also. It is Erste Bank in Austria, so I have done a lot of business here with SLSP, basically. Also the Euro migration, so I used to be there here in Bratislava quite often at that time. However, at some point, so my background is I'm a developer, and somehow I became responsible for database performance. I can't explain how this happened. It's just happened over 10 years. At some point, it was me responsible for that. And I realized that every time we fixed the performance problem, the solution was somehow related to indexes. And that's pretty much it. That's the idea behind use the index loop. Everything you need to do to get database performance right is to get the best possible benefit out of your indexes. Like in this example with the pagination, I mean it's constant response time, independent of the size of the data and where you are going to. I mean, that's a pretty good use of an index. And I thought, it seemed, even in the bank, this was not known to everybody. Actually, I think it was only known to me. So I just quit the job at the bank, which was a pretty tough step to do. And I wrote that book, and yeah, well, that's it. So if you like it, it's for free. The book, which is the book, it's the same content as usetheindexloop.com. You can learn everything from that web page. Okay, the book is just there to actually pay my bills. But if you just want to learn about it, just go to the web page. Everything is there. Okay. So how did I come and what did I do before? I think these were the two questions. Okay, any other last questions coming from the audience here? Okay, so thank you.